Welcome to Princeton Church. Whenever and wherever you're watching this, we're so glad that you've decided to take a couple minutes out of your week to spend time and reflect with us. You know, I was 12 years old when I first learned to ride a bike. Growing up, I had a couple bikes before that, but I had those training wheels that kept me from falling over. And I remember one summer I was visiting my mom's family in Fresno, and I just remember my cousins having the coolest bikes. They probably had cool paint jobs or maybe flames or stickers or streamers on the handlebars, and they would ride those bikes all the time. So when I showed up to visit for a couple days, they asked if I wanted to go out and ride with some of their friends. It was at this moment that my biggest secret was uncovered. I didn't know how to ride a bike. So my aunt immediately put me on a bike, took me out into the street in front of their house, and I looked at her, and then I looked at the bike, and I looked back at her, and I said, there must be a mistake. You see, the bike only has two wheels. I'm more of a four-wheel type guy. But I figured I'd give it a try. You see, my aunt, she's a very persuasive person. So I wheeled up and down the street a couple times, making one or two full pedal rotations before falling over and getting back up to do it again. Now, I know this wasn't intentional, but the area where we were learning in front of her house and the driveway was covered with these beautiful rose bushes. And while everyone loves a good rose, I especially loved roses that day. As I was getting more comfortable and gaining confidence in pedaling just a bit further every time I failed, I soon became very aware of my surroundings. You see, at first my focus was getting to know the bike and finding my center of gravity. But once I started to focus on the things around me, things got interesting. For some reason, I kept veering to one side of the street, and it happened to be that side of the street with those beautiful rose bushes. I can remember my aunt just yelling, "Watch out for the rose bushes!" And it seemed almost instantaneous that my bike veered right into those rose bushes. I forgot all about the roses and immediately became familiar with the thorns. I crashed right into those rose bushes. I picked up my bike and walked back and tried again, and she said, "Watch out for those rose bushes." And I immediately biked right back into that pit of thorns. And these were big thorns. To my 12-year-old self, these thorns were the size of the briar patch thorns at Splash Mountain. I mean, these were foot-long thorns. So this happened time and time again, and I just kept falling into the thing that I wasn't supposed to focus on. But the problem is that the thing that I was so focused on not doing was the thing that I kept falling right back into. I didn't know this at the time, but I learned a very important psych lesson that day. There are things in life that we know we shouldn't do, things that we know aren't good for us, things that hurt us and other people. And sometimes we focus on not doing those things so much that our brain can only focus on those things. And focusing on that overwhelms us, it consumes us, and inevitably it's easy for us to do those things because we've focused on them for so long. More recently, I've also learned this on a spiritual level. So often we focus on doing what is right. We set such incredibly high standards for what it means to do the right thing. But really, and this is my challenge for us today, we shouldn't spend our lives worrying about doing what's right, but rather what is good. On the seventh day after God created the water, the expanse that we call sky, and the land and animals that walk on it, He didn't say that it was right. Genesis 1:31 says, God saw all that He made, and it was very good. The idea of doing what is right is something that we're taught. It's what our parents teach us. It's what we learn in school. It's what religion teaches us. Doing what is right will always be subjective, but doing what is good is what we learn through our faith in Jesus. And we see that time and time again, how Jesus constantly tested what the teachers of the law thought was right. In Matthew 12, Jesus and His disciples were walking through some fields on the Sabbath. They started to get hungry, so they began pulling heads of grain in that field to eat. Now, when the Pharisees saw this, they said to Him, "Look, your disciples are doing what is unlawful to do on the Sabbath." He answered, "Haven't you read what David did when he and his companions were hungry? He entered the house of God and he ate with his companions They ate the consecrated bread, which was not lawful for them to do, but only for the priests. Or haven't you read in the law that the priests on Sabbath duty in the temple desecrate the Sabbath, and yet they're innocent? I tell you that something greater than the temple is here. If you had known what these words mean, I desire mercy, not sacrifice, you would not have condemned the innocent. For the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath. Jesus essentially told the Pharisees, hey, cool it. He said, you who have made these rules for people to follow aren't making the rules for good. You're setting standards, subjective standards that were made years before God in human form came to earth. And if we believe that Jesus is God, it's wild to think that the teachers of the law were so caught up in their traditions of what they thought was right that they completely missed that God as man was speaking to them. Just after this, Jesus then goes into a synagogue, a church, and it's not just any church, it's the church of the Pharisees that just rebuked him. Matthew writes, going on from that place, he went into their synagogue, and a man with a shriveled hand was there. Looking for a reason to charge Jesus, they asked him, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath? You see, this was a test, it was a trick, it was a rhetorical question because they knew the answer based on the laws, but they were trying to catch Jesus. He said to them, if any of you have a sheep and it falls into a pit on the Sabbath, will you not take hold of it and lift it out? How much more valuable is a person than a sheep? Therefore, it is lawful to do good on the Sabbath. It is lawful to do good. You see, this was the moment that Jesus defined the difference between doing what is good versus doing what is right. Jesus was constantly faced with challenges like this, and we're constantly faced with challenges every day. Sometimes those challenges are people. Sometimes they're thoughts. Sometimes they're feelings of failure and inadequacy, but I believe it's these challenges that make our faith stronger. If life was easy, what do we need faith for? If everything always went our way and we never were pushed beyond our limits, what do we need faith for? God never promised the life of a Christian would be easy. In fact, it should be challenging. But listen to this. God knows your faith is stronger than you think it is. To be a Christian is to be uncomfortable, to be challenged, to look at the life you have through the filter of Jesus and love the God who has made the good. Matthew 12:35 says, a good man brings good things out of the good stored up in him, and an evil man brings evil things out of the evil stored up in him. To do good requires action. It's putting our faith into action. It's not focusing on what not to do. It's about focusing on Jesus, his life, his love, so that through that, you too can live out your life with true faith. We'll see you next week.